In the village of Umuagu, elders still whisper about the night the wind refused to blow. They say even the moon hid its face when a woman's cry was swallowed by darkness. That was the night Ego died. But to understand that night, we must begin with the man whose heart was harder than stone, Jidenna, the only son of a father who had 105 children and 19 wives. Jidenna grew up watching his father move from one woman's hut to another, like a king inspecting his farms. His mother was the 19th wife, quiet and gentle, and though she shared her husband with many women, she gave birth to the only son. Because of this, Jidenna's father loved him deeply. Before he died, he called Jidenna close and gave him all his lands, his barns filled with yam, his gold, his goats, and his houses. When the old man died, Jidenna became the richest man in Umuagu. Wealth changed Jidenna like rain changes dry soil. He dressed in the finest clothes, wore beads from far lands, and walked with young men who praised him loudly. Whenever he passed through the market square, women turned their heads. He enjoyed their stares. He loved the way their eyes shone when he threw silver coins on the ground just to watch them scramble and laugh. But Jidenna did not believe in love. To him, women were like sweet palm wine, good to taste but not to keep. He would visit a woman for many weeks, buy her wrappers and gold earrings, and promise her many things. Then, when her heart began to hope, he would disappear like smoke. The elders warned him, but he laughed. He believed his wealth could silence any trouble. One year, during the New Yam Festival, the village was filled with dancing and palm wine. Drums spoke loudly, and the air smelled of roasted meat. That night, Jidenna drank more than he had ever drunk before. His head was light, his steps unsteady. In his drunken state, he found himself beside Ego, the most beautiful maiden in Umuagu. Ego's skin glowed like fresh palm oil, and her smile was soft as morning light. That night, under the laughter of the festival, Jidenna lay with her. By the time the drum stopped beating, something had begun that could never be undone. Weeks later, Ego's belly began to grow, and whispers began to spread across the village like wildfire. Ego's father was not an ordinary man. He was feared, powerful, and his words carried weight. When he heard what Jidenna had done, his anger shook the compound. He called his elders and sent for Jidenna. Though Jidenna was rich, even he knew better than to ignore that summons. The marriage was arranged quickly. There was no joy in Jidenna's heart as he stood beside Ego. He felt trapped like a hunter caught in his own net. The villagers danced and celebrated, but Jidenna's smile was thin and false. From that day, a seed of hatred began to grow in his heart against Ego. Ego entered Jidenna's house as a wife, but she was treated like a stranger. Jidenna barely spoke to her. He slept in separate rooms and stayed out late. When she tried to greet him kindly, he answered with cold silence. The laughter that once lived in Ego's eyes slowly faded. Still, she endured. She believed that patience could melt even the hardest heart. She cooked for him, cleaned his house, and spoke no harsh words. As her pregnancy grew heavy, she prayed that the child would bring peace between them. But Jidenna's heart remained closed like a locked door. The night Ego went into labor, the sky was heavy with clouds. Her cries filled the room as pain gripped her body. Instead of calling the midwives early, Jidenna grew afraid that people would gather and disturb his peace. In his wickedness, he tied a cloth over her mouth to silence her screams. Ego struggled through the pain alone. Hours later, she gave birth to a baby girl. The child's cry was strong and sharp, but Ego's strength was gone. She lay weak, her breath fading like a dying flame. Before the cock crowed, she was gone. The villagers said the ancestors turned their faces away that night. The baby girl was named Essa. She grew like a flower that blooms after heavy rain. Her beauty was gentle but striking, and her eyes carried a quiet wisdom. Whenever she walked through the village, people stopped to admire her. Strangely, Jidena loved Asa with all his heart. He carried her on his shoulders and bought her the finest clothes. He laughed when she laughed and grew angry when anyone spoke harshly to her. Yet, even as he loved his daughter, his hunger for women did not stop. It only grew stronger. As Asa grew older, Jidena's wealth continued to attract women. He courted many, spent heavily on them, and showed them the riches of his house, but he refused to marry again. Some said he feared being forced like before. Others said his heart had grown too selfish to share his home. Because of this, Asa remained his only child. The elders shook their heads and warned him that a man who chases too many birds catches none. But Jidena would not listen. He believed he was untouchable, protected by his wealth and his name. One dry season, a mysterious woman came to Umuagu. No one knew where she came from. She arrived with fine clothes, servants, and boxes of treasures. She built a house near the river and lived quietly. Her beauty was breathtaking, but it was her confidence that truly captured attention. All the men in the village tried to win her heart. Farmers, hunters, traders, they all went with gifts. She refused them one by one. Rumors spread that one man who went to ask for her hand was served a full meal instead. She told him gently that he looked hungry and should eat before thinking of marriage. The story made the village laugh, but it also made the men curious. When Jidena heard of the mysterious woman, his pride was touched. How could a woman come into his village and refuse every man? He dressed in his finest robe, wore his most expensive beads, and prepared gifts that could feed a family for years. He was sure no woman could resist him. As he stood before her house for the first time, he felt something strange in his chest. Not love, not fear, but challenge. The villagers watched from a distance, whispering, would this woman bow like the others? Or would she be the one to change the story of Jidena, the richest man in Umuagu? The wind waited, the earth listened, and the story was far from over. When Jidena finally stood before the mysterious woman, his heart beat like a drum in the night. He had prepared sweet words and rich gifts. He believed no woman could resist him. The woman welcomed him into her fine house near the river. Her voice was soft, and her smile was calm like still water. She told him he was the only man who had everything she had ever dreamed of: wealth, confidence, and power. Jidena felt proud. His chest rose high like a rooster ready to crow. But then her eyes changed. They became cold and sharp. She said there was one condition. If he truly wanted her, he must kill his only child, Asa. The words fell like thunder. Jidena felt the ground shake under his feet. He loved Asa. She was his joy and his pride. He had never imagined such a demand. Without another word, he stood up and left her house, his mind filled with fear and confusion. After that day, Jidena stopped visiting the woman. He tried to forget her words. He told himself no woman was worth the life of his daughter. But the woman did not leave him in peace. Every night, she dressed in fine clothes that shone under the moonlight. She walked past his house slowly, laughing softly, letting him see what he was missing. The villagers began to notice. They whispered as she passed. Jidena would stand behind his window, watching her. His heart burned with desire. He remembered her beauty, her elegance, and her promise.
Slowly, the seed of dark thoughts began to grow inside him. His obsession grew stronger than his love for Asa. The man who once cherished his daughter began to see her as a barrier to his happiness.
Days turned into weeks. Jidena could not eat well. He could not sleep well. Whenever Asa smiled at him, he felt guilt and anger at the same time. He began to avoid her. Asa did not understand. She still greeted him with joy and called him father with love. At night, the mysterious woman would appear again, her beauty shining like fire. She would say nothing, but her eyes would remind him of her condition. Jidena's mind became dark. He started to make plans. He told himself it was only one life for a lifetime of happiness. He forgot the night Asa was born. He forgot the love he once had for her. His heart became harder than iron. One very quiet evening, when the sun was setting and the village was calm, Jidena called Asa. He told her they were going for a walk to the river. Asa was happy. She held his hand and spoke about her dreams. She trusted him fully. When they reached the river, the water was silent and deep. Jidena's hands trembled. For a moment, he almost changed his mind, but then he remembered the mysterious woman. In one cruel movement, he pushed Asa into the river. She struggled, calling his name, but Jidena did not help her. Soon, the water became still again. The river swallowed her voice. That very night, Jidena went to the mysterious woman and told her what he had done. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Then she smiled. She accepted his proposal and agreed to marry him. Jidena felt victorious. He believed he had conquered both love and fate. But the river does not forget, and neither do spirits. Though Asa's body sank into the river, her spirit did not rest. The ancestors had seen everything. Her innocent blood cried out, and in the dark world between life and death, a ghost spirit, her mother who died in pain, heard that cry. A ghost spirit entered Asa's lifeless body. The child rose from the river under the cover of night, but she was no longer just Asa. She was something more. One part of her burned like raging fire, full of anger. The other was cold like deep ice, full of sorrow. She became a dual being, heat and cold, pain and revenge. Weeks after the marriage, Jidena began to feel strange. At night, he would suddenly wake up screaming. One moment he felt too cold, shaking like a leaf in harmattan wind. The next moment he felt too hot, sweating as if standing inside fire. No healer in the village could understand the sickness. They gave him herbs and prayers, but nothing worked. Every night, his screams filled the air. He would shout that someone was touching him with fire and ice at the same time. His new wife grew afraid. She began to see shadows moving in their house. Each night, Asa's spirit stood beside Jidena's bed. One side of her body glowed like red flame. The other shone pale like frozen water. She said nothing. She only watched him suffer. When she touched him, his body felt both burning and freezing. Jidena saw her clearly. He saw the eyes of his daughter and the face of a goat within her. He begged for mercy, but there was none. His new wife could no longer endure the terror. One night, after hearing his endless screams, she packed her belongings and left him. She vanished from the village without a goodbye. Alone and broken, Jidena grew weak. His once proud body became thin. The villagers gathered when they heard his cries day after day. At last, unable to bear the torment, Jidena dragged himself to the village square. In front of everyone, he confessed. He admitted how he drowned Asa in the river. He admitted that his desire for a woman blinded him. The villagers gasped in horror. As he spoke, the sky grew dark and the wind began to spin wildly around him.
Suddenly, Asa appeared before the crowd. Half of her body burned with bright flames, the other shone like frozen stone. The villagers fell to the ground in fear. Jidena cried and begged, but it was too late. Asa's spirit touched him one last time. Fire rose around him, yet frost covered his skin. He burned and froze at the same time. Within moments, he fell to the ground, lifeless. When the wind stopped, Asa vanished like mist at sunrise. And from that day, the elders of Umuagu told this tale to warn the young. A heart ruled by desire will one day destroy itself.